Hello all, Elite DSP here. Today I'm bringing you my Jade Harvester build for the Realm of Trials. One of the big problems even I face when doing progression rifts is trying to get the rift keystone fragments. Now, my first recommendation would be to use a geared demon hunter. They're by far the easiest way to get high level keystones, and if you have one, you might as well use it. But if you're like me and you don't already have a geared demon hunter, and you don't want to gear one out, then this build is for you. In this guide, we'll talk about differences between the normal Jade Harvester spec and my trial spec. These differences will center around the spec itself, the gear, and the gameplay. By switching out my spec and gear, I end up getting about 4 to 5 Greater Rift level keystones higher than I would normally get if I would just use my normal Greater Rift gear and spec. So let's start with the spec. It's actually very similar to the Jade Harvester build. The main differences are that you change 3 of the runes and 1 of the passives. The first difference is to use Lingering Spirit on Haunt instead of Resentful Spirits. Whenever a mob dies with Haunt on it, Haunt will jump to the next target. Now with Lingering Spirit, it sticks around for an extra 10 seconds. This is enough time to allow for the next wave to start. And with Lingering Spirit, all those Haunts will jump to the new targets, meaning you don't have to dot up all these extra targets. Basically what this does is it saves you time. It allows you to use your Soul Harvest a lot quicker than if you were to use Resentful Spirits. The next change is instead of using Gruesome Feast as a passive, like I normally like to use, I use Pierce the Veil instead. Now the problem with Gruesome Feast for this is, while they do drop some orbs, health orbs, they don't drop nearly enough to make Gruesome Feast worth it, so that extra 20% damage is very helpful. The problem with Pierce the Veil is it makes everything cost 30% more mana, and with how much you're having to cast on these mobs, it makes you go pretty fast. So that's where our next rune comes into play. On Horrify, we use Ruthless Terror instead of Frightening Aspect. Now, Ruthless Terror gives you mana back for every enemy hit by Horrify, and this quickly fills up your mana bar just instantly whenever you use Horrify. It completely fixes the mana issues caused by Pierce the Veil. Our last rune change is going to be on Locust Swarm. Now, instead of Pestilence, you're going to want to use Devouring Swarm. This is because you end up having a lot of cold damage, and quite frankly, all you care about is getting that Locust Swarm on your high health targets. Well, these are the ability changes from the standard Jade Harvester build, and if you guys don't already know the abilities that you'd use, go ahead and check out my Beginner's Jade Harvester guide that I have down in the description below. Next, we're going to talk about the changes in gear that you want to make. Now, a big difference is, since there's no elites in here, you really don't want elite damage. It's completely worthless. So, to get rid of that elite damage, instead of a Furnace, you want to use a Wrath of the Bone King. This will give you extra cold damage, so your spells will hit a little harder, and it's just all around stronger than a Furnace for trials. Next, you really don't want to use Bane of the Powerful. It will never proc, and you'll never get that 15% damage bonus. So instead of that, you're going to want to go ahead and use Taeguk. Now, what Taeguk does is it gives you a stacking armor and damage buff every time you cast a spell that costs mana, and since you're going to be constantly casting, especially casting your Lingering Spirit, you're going to always have that stacking up. At high levels of Taeguk, you'll realize that it's going to be even more damage than your Bane of the Trapped. Aside from these two changes, your gear is really not going to be different than you use for a regular Greater Rift. But if you guys don't already know what to use for the regular Greater Rifts, go ahead and check out in the description below my Greater Rift 40 Plus gearing guide, and also my Legendary Gem guide. Now, let's talk a little bit about gameplay, and you guys will be ready to form out some high-level Greater Rift keystones. First off, your main goal is to get everything into your Piranado and into a big group so that you can soul harvest everything at once. Luckily enough, most of the mobs are melee. They'll end up just running towards you. I tend to stand in the southeast corner, so that way you see all the mobs as they spawn, and if there's any stragglers, you can go ahead and haunt those from far away and hope that they come in time. Now, you will have a few problems on things like Exarchs and Exorcists. So for Exorcists, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stand just about on top of the Exorcist in the southeast corner, and the Exorcist from the northwest corner will then port on top of you and into your Piranado. Exarch's a little harder. To deal with them, you really need to be good with your Piranado so that you put the Pronado on the very edge of the X-Arc, and it flips the X-Arc over to the other side of the Pronado, thereby putting him closer to the other X-Arc that you also need to then Pronado that one over. So they're a little harder, and you really just have to hope that you don't get these on your highest progression Great Rift waves. For standard gameplay, you're going to want to keep on just spamming Haunt. This will both stack up your Tagic, and it'll get those Lingering Spirits ready for when the mob spawns so that they can jump. This means even in between waves, when there's nothing there, you want to keep on spamming Haunt over and over again. You can literally just spam Haunt up to wave about, say, 20 or so. Past 20, you're going to have to use your other spells like Pronado to get them all together, Soul Harvest, and then put a Locust Swarm out to do a little extra damage. With all the spamming, you might run out of mana, and if you do, all you gotta do is hit Horrify. It'll instantly increase your mana bar up to full. So these are the tips and tricks that I figured out while doing the trials. I hope it helps you guys out, and I hope you guys do well in your trials. If you guys have any ideas that I haven't figured out, go ahead and let me know in the comments. That would be awesome, because I'm always trying to figure out ways to get even higher in my trials. If you guys could, go ahead and rate the guide. It helps me know what you guys like and what you guys don't like. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. It'll keep you guys up to date on everything that I put out. Thanks for watching.